We are now recording. Thank you, Ahmed. Appreciate it. Okay, so what I had just said prior to starting the recording is that we have I have swim lanes for each of these sort of actors in this narrative. The screens or the boxes that have a slightly rounded corner are those that I think are application interfaces. So screens or sets of screens that we need to design or implement logic for. The ellipse is something that's taking place outside of the app. And I have decision points, the end of a process or a separate process just here, so saying that that's going to lead to a whole separate flow. And then I've color coded them to have green indicate that I think that we have a design in Zeppelin already and that we don't need to touch that at all. And blue to convey my understanding that I think we still, that we don't yet have a mocked up or designed screen for it. So in all of this, I'm trying to be clear on because I think that there is definitely opportunity to improve this workflow, and there may be things that we may have different assumptions about what has been done or what still needs to be done. And so I wanted to start by sharing sort of what I thought was going on, and then we can talk through anything if there's other information.
Yeah.
Questions or thoughts before I move on?
No, it makes a lot of sense. Right.
Okay. So then just talking through it, I think that my assumption is that we will preload a set of users. So I think that it's my recollection from talking with Poniso is that they would have like a set of people that there are known residents or known contractors. And so we would load them, and that the unique identifier would be the phone number for that group of users. And so now when somebody approaches the gate for the first time, the first question is whether they have a profile or not. And if they've been there before, maybe they would know to just open up their app. But if not, the guard would probably ask them, do you have a profile or do you have an app installed? And if they say yes, then we'll treat them, we'll go through a different flow, the return user flow that I have down here. And I think that we have most of this flow designed. But I think the flow around whether they don't yet exist in the system is one that I think I'm proposing that we work on for this sprint. And so I think the first thing that the guard would do is ask them if they have a phone number, in which case we would look up and see whether that person already exists in the application database. And if so, and then if we find them and it's their first time to log in, then we need to bring them to a screen where the guard is going to capture some information from them. The name, get their picture, maybe a vehicle identification, whatever other information we need from them. And then if we find them and find that they already have a profile, that they've already logged in, then we'll bring them back to the return user flow where we expect them to we expect that they already have a profile that has all of this information in it. Let me pause. Does that seem logical so far?
Yeah, it does. But there is a part here where it says found, right? So if it says yes, and then first time login. Okay, all right, makes sense. That's what I was gonna ask. I was wondering what happened if it's not the first time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
that's a better way of saying it than returning. Okay, so now the question is, if let's say that phone number doesn't exist in the database, which would be my expectation for most contractors that are there. So I think that my expectation is that most likely if a resident shows up, we already have a record of them, that they know who their residents are, but that most of the contractors, we don't yet know anything about them when they are showing up at the gate for the first time. Right. So in that case, I think that the way we have it designed right now is that we would actually deny entry. We would show them the, I was gonna flip to a different app, but I'm realizing I'm not sharing that screen. But in Zeppelin, there's a design for an access for entry denied, right. And then there's a call button there for calling Poniso. So I think the guard would then call Poniso, who needs to review some information about that profile. And based on who that person is, then would make a decision of how to treat them. So I think if they're a contractor and he knows sort of who they are and we just didn't know their phone number, he would say, okay, go ahead and let them in. And we would then create the record and verify that it's okay to let them in. And the guard would say, please download the app so that next time you can log in with the app. And then they would be able to enter the property. If they're a resident, we would, Poniso wants to do an escorted entry. So we would create the profile. We may need some way of communicating to the guard, or maybe just Poniso tells the guard, tell them to wait. But the guard needs some way of, we just need to be clear there. So we may already have the screen or we may not, but some way to then say, hey, Poniso is gonna come and walk you around. And if there's some other situation, we probably don't yet know what that's gonna be. I think that's sort of an unexpected situation at this point. But it could be an investor, a stakeholder, another person on staff at Nkwashi that we don't yet have an account for. So I think there's still a lot of reasons why we may not have that. And in this case, we would deny the entry, and they would need to visit the office. And at the office, that office would either get all the profile information and have to either approve or reject that profile.
But, so if they have to visit the office, they have to still enter the property, right?
That's a great question. I think the office is in Lusaka.
Yeah, I think all the main stuff is handled in Lusaka for this kind of thing.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think visit office may be as simple as a phone call in many cases. It could be that somebody at the office knows who they are. So that may be a virtual visit rather than an in-person visit.
So maybe contact office or something?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay.
Okay. I guess let me first check for understanding. Does this seem like a clear flow, and are there things that I guess there's two things I want to do. One is just make sure that this assumption sort of makes sense as a starting place, and then if it does not, we should do some clarifications. And if it does make sense, then I think there are probably ways that we can improve upon this workflow. There's probably some area. I'm sure there are ways that we can improve upon it, but I just thought it would be good to have a shared understanding of it before we.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I mean, from my standpoint, this all makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. This is great.
So, and then does it seem right that these are the screens that we have yet to design, that this would be the things that we need to do for this sprint?
Yeah, the first sign in, create password is the one. Well, I'm wondering how is that different from like a sort of a registers screen?
Yeah, let me. Sorry, I need to figure out how to change what I'm sharing on the screen here, and then I can show why I thought that was a different screen. Strange, I can't seem to get to my, oh, here we go. Okay, so here's, my assumption is that on that screen, which is this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this screen, I think, is assuming that the person already has a phone number and a password.
Right.
There's not yet a place I don't think that they would yet have created a password unless that, because they wouldn't, because on the screen where the guard is giving them the information or taking their picture, they probably would not be creating a password there. So I think we need a slight variation of this screen where for the first time, this sign in would be a little bit different, where it needs to create a password.
Okay, so it'll probably be a sign up, right? So that we'll have just a sign in, sign up maybe?
Yeah.
So it'll be that second tab basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And sorry, what is there a design for that already?
No.
Okay.
So I just did the sign in one because
okay, great.
I thought that the registration would be made by admin at the time. So
right.
Perfect. Yeah.
Do we think that that access control, like just getting in and out of the gate, really needs a password? Just as we think about like complexity of user adoption, like I get why payments and user accounts and all that kind of stuff, but what about just just flashing the QR code that says I get to get in? Like, does that really need a password?
I would definitely put the password, maybe some information like, the contact information or location of the, particular areas, things like that that's accessible to anyone. But for an ID and things that's super personal, you'd have to kind of have a way to identify before we share that. So anything like your ID, maybe the scanner doesn't require it. But things like showing the ID, I would think would make sense to be associated with the password. And also, it wouldn't be something where they would sign in and out, right? Like once they're signed in, it should keep them log in unless they log out, right?
For a certain period of time, that would make sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're signing in with their phone, we can avoid the password entirely and just do SMS sign in each time.
Yeah. That was going to be my other follow up, Mark and Nolan, which was I would love to see the flow on here. I get that maybe it's not our first launch design, that there is a like SMS focused access, but and so I don't know where that lives in our where that lives either in our work in the flow that you shared today, Nolan, or in a backlog in Asana. But I could imagine very quickly we may need that. Basically, instead of sign in, there's this other way that you're getting in. Enter is okay, and like I don't know. I think we have a lot of learning to do about like, yes, the contractor company is approved, but like all the individual contractors are also approved. Maybe they're like, we don't know what their tenure is typically. Is it like 1 week? Is it 1 year that they're like actively working on the site? And so like we can actually like kind of really train up a particular behavior. We don't really know whether they have phones, like all that stuff is still kind of learning to happen. So I think quickly we may need an easier path for a contractor to get in through the gate than downloading an app.
We do have an alternative for them not having. It will be them just getting a printed QR code.
But yeah, we have that at the office, but not in the flow that happens that Nolan's designed here. So they would have to go to the office and get a printout sticker, or somehow we would have to talk with Boniso about the other way that those QR stickers might get printed.
Ideally, what I'm thinking for that is that once it's authorized there, right? The guard gets the ability, they get like a small printer and they get the ability from there to just print. Just like when you go to a company and you register, the guard just prints a temporary badge and just sends it to you. So something like that.
Yeah, it would be nice. There's probably not that many gates.
Yeah, Jay, my assumption is that takes place here in the returning user flow, which somehow has gotten screwed up on this. well, I'm going to fix that later. So here it would be, this would either be profile would be the ideal way. It could be a printout or a SMS would be one of the three ways that they could present identification.
Got it.
So this is all under the returning user flow.
Got it.
When we say SMS, would it be in the form of a link?
I think SMS would be, if we choose, so I think just to be clear, SMS I'm assuming is not something that we're doing on this sprint, but that we have an SMS flow workflow mapped out in the design sketches. I can pull that document up just to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
I remember us having a discussion regarding those sketches, and we thought that in the end, one alternative could be that once you register and you're in the system, the guard maybe has the ability to just look you up based on your phone number and simply let you in or out without you even having to show something.
Well, I think that I think that is a possibility. I think it's not as secure as an SMS login because somebody could just give a phone number. I guess this would be a higher security version of that, right? Because we would then recognize that they have that phone number and be able to give them a code that the guard needs to verify. So then we would know that they actually have that phone number, and that they have a picture with it. I'm thinking through, because actually, you know, I wonder if that's any more than just presenting a phone number.
It does, because I remember last time Mark also asked a question. I think, what was the mechanism? Like once you send the message, you get your code, right? At the same time, the guard also gets a notification. I think that's the part that wasn't super clear. Like how does it let the guard know that that specific person, like how does it recognize that which guard to show this to? Like how does this the next screen happen, the one that is confirmed?
Right. Yeah, if there are multiple guards signed in. Yeah, and I think we didn't answer that question.
Yeah.
Because we don't necessarily know where they are.
Yeah, and this one just didn't seem that scalable in case like later on there's multiple guards, multiple gates.
Yeah, I see.
So,
yeah, I think that's, and that was where, yeah, sorry, I'm remembering this now. So that was where we dropped the SMS for this sprint because because the logic of that is not yet clear on how we would handle that.
Yeah. So the alternative to this was that, hey, there is a database, right? Where once you have access, you're in that database and the guard has the ability to just look it up. Maybe the worst case scenario, if we want to be secure, there is like just showing your ID. Based on your ID, they will look you up. Once you're there, they will let you in. But it's not the recommended flow that we want, but it's like an alternative when they don't have access to a phone or other things.
Well, we'll have a lookup by phone number here. So I think that may actually solve that problem for the short term and maybe even for a longer term then, right? Because would that be are you imagining that would be the same thing, Ahmed, where they show up and you put in the phone number and then now the system finds them and they're in one of these two flows?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the phone number was one, but in my mind, I thought it could be any way of looking them up. Like, I don't see why it should just be the phone number. It could be the name. It could be, because at the end, it's going to be a picture of their ID and just another way to identify them. So I don't know why we should limit it to just the phone number.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so this is a
Generic lookup.
yeah.
Lookup user.
Somehow this somehow I'm finding some limitations in the free workflow design tool. Who would have thought? Okay, so if this looks pretty straightforward, that may be all the design that we need to do for today. Maybe we just need to touch base on some open questions or what we need to do for the sprint. I don't want to. I guess, are there other things that we feel like we need to do to be unblocked to get started?
No, I think it's great that we all can have visibility and kind of see this thing come together and agree on it. So I think, at least for me, I have plenty of items to work on, and I can directly just go to the screens instead of having to think about the flow on my own. So this is very helpful, actually. Thanks for doing this.
Great. And let me just say, I think that especially in this area, there's probably some logical cleanup that we can do here. Like, I noticed that no matter what's happening here, we're then creating. So it may make more sense to create it first, and then you have it in the system, and then you can do it like this. So there are some things that I want to tweak on this workflow. I have been looking at another workflow tool. I just picked this one last night because it's, this seemed like a pretty easy way to get something going that we could talk about. But even as I got into it, I found workflow very helpful. So I'm looking at some other workflow tools that may be more, that may allow us to collaborate and see if there's something we can do. But in the meantime, as we get into this, I just want to say, please consider this a straw man. And if you see ways to improve it, or if you see omissions or bugs in this, let's not take this as gospel, but take this as a concrete starting place and iterate on it just as we would anything else.
Hey Nolan, one more question.
Yeah.
Right here. So, can you remind me again what happens with create?
This I'm just saying is add it to the database. This is the app logic.
Okay.
So I'm saying that at this point in the flow, we will have updated account information. So we'll have a picture and everything.
Yeah.
Like I said, we probably, I realized as I was going through it, we probably will create it at this point, right? Because even for Poniso to review the profile, it probably needs to already exist in the system.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a logical bug. I think I just have this step in the wrong place in the flow. But the tool got so cumbersome to try to redraw it that I was like, well, I don't have time to do it now before the meeting. And then I expect that there are other sort of things that we need to clean up in the workflow as we go through. But I think that which screens that we need to have, I think that was a little confusing on Friday.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to try to get clarity on what we were talking about in terms of a lookup screen and account update screen, sign in, etc.
Yeah. Regarding the logic, what I'm thinking is it will probably be, I'm thinking of like two pulls, right? Like one of the application that sort of need to be reviewed, or the profile that need to be reviewed, and then one of like all the granted access. So it's like if we look you up and you're not in a granted list, then we just know that you don't have access, right?
Right. I think that would be this flow, right?
Yeah.
We don't find them, and then we know you don't have access.
Yeah, like almost like two things happening. One thing happening before once they send it to Poniso, before it even gets to Poniso, it's in sort of this list of all the application that he needs to review, and then another once Poniso grant or deny, it's going to send them into another sort of list. That's kind of how I'm thinking of it in my head. Does it make sense?
I'm not sure I follow the logic. Can you talk me through it?
Yeah. So like here, when they send a profile for Peniso to review.
Sorry,
then,
I can't see your mouse. So
oh, sorry. So
do you want to screen share?
I wouldn't be able to share this.
I think you should be able to pull this up. You want to see if you can get into this document?
Let me see.
I got in and it doesn't seem to be a shared entry. It seems to be a static entry.
Okay, that's fine.
Oh, really? Okay.
If you scroll a little bit, the part that says review profile or call Peniso.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. So, so here it says review profile who, and then if it's contractor, add to the database. But what I'm thinking is before it even gets to the review, right? So there is a list of everything that needs to be reviewed. Everyone who comes and apply, there is a list of them. And then there is a list of whoever have the access granted. So when the security guards are, for instance, looking someone up, they're only looking into the list of access granted. And if you're not there, you just don't have access, right? And then there is a list of applicants, right? So list of applicants and list of granted access.
Yeah.
But here,
yeah,
we only
you
have...
raised a really good point, Ahmed. I think this flow is assuming very much like a real-time interaction and that there's not any queuing taking place. And I think you're right to assume that there's going to be some queuing taking place, and that some of this may not happen real time, and we need to design around the idea that there may be a few people standing in line, or when Poniso gets to review profile, there's more than one profile.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just take a note to think through, consider queuing logic.
Yeah. I'm sure, you know, that's probably something Mark can speak to also. Like, I don't know how this will be built, but I'm thinking it would be pulling from two different places, right? Like when it's asking for access, it'll pull from one place. And when Peniso is looking up profiles to review, it's pulling them from a different place. Is that fair to assume?
I mean, it's all coming from the same, I guess we're still running out of the same database and we're putting in this data somewhere. I guess the issue is we're gonna have some pending group or some group that almost like, yeah, pending users, and Peniso has to go in there and actually approve those.
Okay.
So I don't know how I think the question is how they get in there and how we have to build that admin interface of what that looks like for reviewing a profile.
Okay.
What information he needs, and because I think right now it kicked off with a phone call, right? The next step is how do we kind of like combine the two of like, hey, I got this new user, here's their information, and probably a phone call kicks it off still.
Yeah, because that's what I'm thinking. How do we categorize all those users? The one who's applying, the one who have the access granted. I guess that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think like from the data standpoint, I think it's just going to be, it's all going to exist in the database, and you're just going to have a flag as like pending, not approved user, something like that.
I mean, if you think about like most typical like Salesforce flows, right? Like this is basically an activity flow, right? Like so you get like a certain number of stages that you know like check people through on that design, right? You know, like like these guys are in stage 3 now, right? That therefore some set of activities happens in this stage.
Oh, so we are keeping, so that means that in the designs, like when they scan, maybe even when the person, because I didn't think about it when I was designing it. I only did one if it's valid, if you have valid access, if you granted access, or if you denied access. But maybe there should be one where the access is pending, so that you can know that that person already applied, right? Instead of having to apply again, so that it will mark that user as pending, maybe.
And therefore something, and therefore like, hey, call them and check it out. Like, hey, come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be okay tomorrow. Hey, like, it's pending. We have a certain set of rules under which temporary access is provided to pending.
Yeah.
Which I can't even ideate. And so we'd have all that is like talking with Tuniso about like IDL security protocol.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, so it sounds like we need a pending state. I think you're right, Ahmed. That's and both of you. I think that's that will be a helpful way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And all the interesting activity on that happens in these administrative workflows and tools that we'll design later.
Yeah.
A thing came up for me on the entry OK pushed out to the please download section.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether I'm assuming entry OK please download is sort of like they've given us some sort of identification. If they've given us a phone number, we can push them a link to download, right? If they've not given us a phone number, but we've identified them via a picture, and the guy just looked at basically the security guard looked at the 10 approved people, contractor list, and he's like, oh, you're on the list. He may just verbally say, can you get a phone and download this, right? Like, because maybe they don't have a phone or something, right? I think we don't know all the different ways that please download happens. If it is a push link, there's a part of me that would like actually it to basically just be that same screen with that is the access screen, with the QR code or whatever, and the photo or whatever like profile that we have.
Right.
That is like that link is a HTML version of the login that is used as it's basically a one-time use login on in a browser, and then at the bottom of that is please download so that we don't have to send you a one-time use login every time you show up at the gate. But they could always still show up at the gate, and every time we're like, hey, we know you're in the list, like here's today's like short-term login. You can go a lot faster if you download the app. And that might allow us to both log the entry and like for a little while like handle the fact that people may not download apps.
Jay, are you talking about the contractor specifically or
I am talking about the contractors. It could also be a thing for like guests of residents or a visiting resident or something. Or a prospective resident, one who is like considering buying a plot.
Yeah.
But I think for now, I'm thinking about contractors coming through the door who maybe I am assuming wrongly, but like I'm kind of assuming that like 50-50, I can't get them to download the app early on. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I think what I'm thinking about that is, okay, if they don't download the app, it's probably because of reasons like not having a smartphone or different reasons like that, right? Not because they wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So if that limitation is there, then even the link also would be a problem to be able to open the link if they don't have the smartphone. Yeah,
that's true. But it could also, the other thing could just be like, hey, we don't download apps that often, or like, that takes too much time. I don't need any more apps on my phone.
So I think it's highly likely that the contractors are going to be unlikely to download this or willing to download it, or they're most likely going to be a piece of paper, it seems like. Residents are the more likely to save it in their phone somehow. So I don't know. I think like the question is, Ahmed brought this up with like the printer idea of just, you walk in, you do some simple registration. It's you're either found in the system or not, and then they print out a barcode for you, and that's it. And that's what you carry every time you visit the site again in the future. And if you lose it, again they print out the barcode and
Yeah,
you know.
where would that print barcode take place in the workflow? Would that be here?
Yeah, the please download, right? It'd be like, here's your printed barcode. Next, when you come back tomorrow, just have this, and we'll scan it.
Yeah.
And I think, it's basically they're entered into the system in some fashion, like with your phone number or name. They're found by the guard. They're updated if it hasn't been updated, and then they're issued a barcode.
Yeah.
Right. You know what, Mark? So it's we probably want those pre-printed, right? Like we could have them
You could do that.
A pre-printed QR code, and then the guard would just need to. There would be an offshoot here that's essentially for this first sign-in, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having them do that, the guard would give them a QR code and say, "Here's your ID." Now that doesn't have a picture on it, but that would be a physical thing that they would have with it. When the guard would scan it, they would see their picture and have to confirm. So then that would be the other way, I guess, right? The guard could hand them a QR code and then associate that QR code with their profile.
Yeah, we need to figure out how to make that somewhat seamless, because the issue there is like anytime you have people, I just think like anytime you have people handing out that stuff, they tend to hand it out without scanning it, without signing it. It's like, oh, here's your thing, because they don't understand. And then the next day comes back and it's like not registered.
Yeah,
well, that would be fine. Then they would just show up as an unauthorized user.
Yeah.
Right. So if the guard forgets to do that, it just falls into the.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess what I would ask is how is that assigned? What's the mechanism to assign it?
Well, that's the thing, right? It'd have to be either they type in the number or they scan it with their phone and link it to the account. It'd almost be like a screen where it'd say, that's where you'd have to be very explicit on the screen and say, okay, give them a barcode and then tell us which one you gave them, essentially.
So that would probably involve another screen then.
It's basically like, give them a barcode. Okay, now scan the barcode, and then like that barcode is now associated with that account.
Okay.
And yes, Ahmed, if we did that flow, if we implemented that flow, it would require it would be a different screen that we haven't yet designed.
So do we think something like this will be the best, like the most seamless way that we can do this, or I don't know.
I mean,
go on, Mark.
Well, I'm just trying to think about the other way of doing it, because the problem is they're saying like, go get them a barcode and now scan it. I wonder if there's a way of basically printing out a bunch of barcodes, say like 50, 100, whatever, and have on those barcodes, have on those entry cards something like a number like 47. 252. And they're all in sequential order, right? And then when you say like assign a new user, it says, hey, give them barcode 252, which is the next one in the stack. The only downside there is if it's not there, then they got to find actually that's more complicated.
Well, Mark, could you also just do, okay, security guard, snap a photo of the QR code that's on the top of the stack. Now that QR code is assigned to this new account that you're creating, handed over.
Yeah, no, that's what I was thinking initially, was just snap a photo, and that works too. I'm just trying to find. It's just I feel like there's a chance that they'll fall. I don't know. There's just a chance that they'll skip that step and they'll just hand them the piece of paper and then like off they go, which is fine. Not the end of the world, but.
Yeah, that's why the printing thing seems more natural, right? Because you do it, boom, it prints. You just rip it and hand it like a receipt.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I was thinking with
hardware.
Yeah, and also then it just means that they have a piece of paper, which I think feels like flimsy. I think if we were to print these out, we'd want them to be like a little bit more solid, right? We'd want to hand them an ID card that can, that's laminated, can fit in the wallet, or, you'd want to do something. I guess I'm imagining like a little card that has a QR code on it and like they can write in permanent marker, their name on the top of it, so that it's something that feels a little bit more substantial, and it's still a temporary code, but then you have like that QR code. I can take that as an exercise, because I think that there, like Ahmed, you and I can touch base on this, but I think what we could do is either in this flow here on the update account, or on this entry okay, you could have a stage gate that just says, please scan the code that you just gave them, right? Like hand them a card and now scan that card, and you don't actually give them the entry okay screen until they've associated a QR code with it.
So this is for if they're first time, right?
Yeah.
So what happens if they're first time?
That's right.
Okay.
Right. It's here in the please download. It's are you willing to download the app? And then they either download the app, and if they say no, then you say, okay, here's your QR code. Let me register that QR code. The problem is that gives them a disincentive to download the app, right? And Jay, to your point, it would be nice. I really like the idea that there's a one-time password that there's a one-time flow that they can do as many times as they need. And then if that doesn't work, or when they get sick of that, then they can just download the app because it streamlines it. And the problem is, once you give them a physical code, then they have no incentive to download the app anymore.
Just thinking like thinking, 3 years down down the line, I think that one-time password thing, access thing, is probably the most likely version of a guest, right? Like, on occasion, guests will come so frequently that they will want to have the app themselves.
Right.
I'm inclined to think that more often they'll be using one-time passwords, either something that a resident sends them ahead of time, which speeds all of things through, or something that can get generated while at the security desk.
Right. Do you guys want to continue talking about this now, or would it be better for me to just take this offline and propose something after I've given it a little bit more thought?
Yeah.
Maybe we could all step back and come back in like half a day or a day, and yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't mean that I'm the only one that should be thinking about it, but just that maybe we don't need a solution right at the moment, because we have enough to get us moving forward on this sprint.
Yeah.
I'm also inclined to, like, if we've got a pretty good gut on ways that we could do this, like, sketch something up real fast, maybe it's through the flow thing, maybe it's through three potential screens, Ahmed, that you create. And then let's get with Poniso and basically be like, hey man, here's what we put together. Can you think of a way that is like 50% easier than what we've tried to do here? That actually would solve all of the security needs that you might have with your contractors, because it could become relatively complex fast. And yet, like, my get is that when you're doing it, like, you guys would probably have an easy way that you kind of like come up with your right workaround that would become your process. So how can we make this easiest for all of us?
Hey, I'm also thinking one thing that could help us like move forward a little bit easier could be like maybe kind of coming up with some sort of principles that can help us make those decisions in terms of what is important to us in this particular field. Do we want to sort of push for them to download the app and try to keep everything within the app? Are we trying to make it as fast and seamless as possible? Are we trying to be as most cost efficiently as possible? All those different things that could actually help us make the right decision, right? And kind of keep us on the same page in terms of.
I think there's two different user this matters to, right? Like the contractors, it's probably the fast and efficient. It's the residents, it's more of a download and experience the brand and stay logged in.
Right. So that's how I'm thinking about it too. So that's why I'm kind of pushing more for the print, because I'm thinking, okay, that will be more, faster and more efficient and more scalable with the contractors, and could be applied to like a visitor or someone doing delivery, because I can think of a lot of people who would fit in the contractor segment, even in the future. Like anybody who doesn't have like the right, access could fit into the contractor flow. So the easiest way that we could do it and the cheapest way that we could do it is how I'm thinking about it.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that like as often as possible, like our goal here is going to be like a really smart digital system for a city that is much less expensive than any alternative. And like the more and more like that we are fast and less expensive, because we did it on a very modern approach to the technology and a very modern approach to the workflow, the more likely it is that we'll scale.
Yeah.
I mean, so looking at that from that angle, what does the QR code get us with the contractors that a phone number doesn't just get us? Like if they just said their phone number when they got to the gate and their photo came up, is that enough?
Yeah, I think that's enough.
I agree.
I think especially if you send something to that phone to know that that's in fact the phone number that they have, which is where that code came in from the get-go, because if I come in and I give you a phone number, right, then presumably you want some way of sending a verification to that phone.
Yeah.
But that I think that is just as good as the QR code. And Ahmed, I totally agree with you on the principle, and I think fast and efficient is the right principle. I'm not convinced that a printout or a card or whatever is actually going to be so fast or efficient, because I think you might run into like hardware problems where like the printer's out of ink or the printer's out of paper or they ran out of cards or whatever. And then I also could see that being a litter problem. I could see that, somebody uses that and then the first time it doesn't work, they just throw it on the, ground, and you just have these like QR codes sitting all over the place. So my inclination would be to do it digitally if we can find a way to solve that problem. So I still like and I recognize that this flow is still not, like there's still some problems here, and that could be the other way that we come back to this, is just see if there's a way that we could, maybe it's that this code doesn't show up right away, but maybe we send them a 6-digit code, then the guard enters that same 6-digit code into his or her screen, and then that pulls up their QR code, or that pulls up not their QR code, but that pulls up their profile.
I guess what I'm having a hard time is understand why the phone part is more secure, because just verifying that they have, just verifying that it's their phone or the phone is in their presence, to me is not as strong of a verification as just being able to just look up their ID, right? That's the formal verification. That's how people get into planes and things like that. So basically, literally, like you give your name, I look up your ID, and it's almost like you don't have to necessarily carry your ID. Once you register, you just tell me your name, and I have a database where I have your ID here saved, and I can look it up and I can see your picture, and you don't have any way of faking this, right? It's not like you can show up and show me a fake ID. No, it's in the database. It's already registered. Just give me your name and I can look you up, right?
I see. So you're saying we don't even need to verify that phone number. If I come in and give you a phone number and the guard looks it up and they see my picture, then that's good enough.
Yeah, I think that the phone number becomes a unnecessary limitation that I can't really justify in my head.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm too stuck on that verification part of it.
Well, so we should ask Panisa. I mean, I think I don't know. I don't remember his thoughts on this, but did people having ID, was that common versus a phone? Like the initial scan is really the most important one.
Yeah, he did mention that, culturally people were like a little bit, but if it's necessary, people would do it.
Yeah.
We'll just want to give them an alternative. So if you don't want to show your ID all the time and you can download the app, then more power to you. But if you don't, then you're going to have to show your ID. But in this case, what I'm saying is they wouldn't even have to, they would give their ID one time. Once it's registered in the database, you don't have to show your ID.
Yeah.
Did have one other idea. Probably not this sprint, but put in your head, Ahmed, in your head, Mark. Think about contractors coming on to work on a big work site, right? Like you got a truck. Truck's got 3 or 4 workers in it.
Yeah.
We might speed things up by basically having like a truck. The trucks, like let's assume the driver of the truck is the manager. Okay. And the driver is more likely to have the nicer phone because they're the manager. Now that's a huge assumption, probably not true, but whatever. You could have a smartphone that on it, I don't know if you guys can see this, but like on it basically is like a list of the other people in the car with like the manager has gone through and basically said, these are the 4 people who are approved to work on the site today. They're all coming in the car together. And you just flash the whole thing at the security guard, and maybe actually even like after you do this, it flips over to a single QR code, and maybe Mark, that single auto-generated QR code actually then connects back to all 4 of these people in the database and says that on this one-time use QR code, they all just came in the door. Which might really speed things up at the front for contractors.
That might be, I would be interested to get Panisa's idea on how he wants to handle multiple people. Yeah. Because I will say that the more you rely on, and I'm going by this based on American contractor standards, but if like you said to a contractor in America, like when you show up with 4 people, you need to go through this app and do it, they just won't do it. They'll be like, no, man, I got to get somewhere. I'm not putting anything on my phone. You do your job. Look it up.
Now, on the flip side, though, like if one of the things that Ninkwashi is basically kind of like known for early on, even among the contractor community, is a high secure environment, and they communicate like their value of security in all sorts of different ways, and one of the ways is through this contractor gate experience, gated community, right? Yeah. Like, hey, to get on board, like with doing work in this place that we're doing some really cool building, like, yeah, you'd probably at least raise your hand and say, okay, I'll let my team go through it. Now the team's going to be frustrated every time, but like the manager might do it.
But I think I would argue, just to play devil's advocate here, I would argue that it would actually be, although we want to optimize for speed, I think where we want to stop that is when it gets to security. So not at the cost of security. And I feel like this design would give a little bit more speed, but at the cost of security, because it's not focusing specifically on one. It's more like, oh, okay, all right. It's probably going to happen to where the guard is just going to take a quick look. It's those tiny images all in one screen. And they're just going to say, okay, without actually taking the time. Versus there, I would want to put like the friction, purposeful friction where they actually have to go through one at a time and maybe swipe through them. We can still try to add some sort of speed to where they open it. It's showing them one at a time and they can just slide through them quickly.
That's nice.
But I still would want to focus on one so that they can really take the time to make sure that that person is okay. Maybe even add something, some sort of action from them, like, tap it if it's valid, just that friction so that they have to do something.
I appreciate that principle there, Ahmed. That makes a lot of sense. It's great, Phil.
Yeah, and Ahmed, I think to your point, there could be something where the guard selects things in a screen like what Jay is showing and then presents one QR code, and that QR code pulls up 4 different profiles that the guard then goes through sequentially and says, yes, 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 right? So there could be some queuing that takes place. But I think we're definitely a sprint ahead. I think, Jay, you wouldn't say this is a requirement for this sprint, right?
No.
Yeah. So just in the interest of time, maybe let's try to bring it back to anything else, any other questions that we need for this particular sprint, and if there are things that we need to review with Quiniso. It seems like we do have a few open questions for this sprint, especially around the printing, the scanning, the pushing of the link, whether there's a one-time password or SMS or something like that. Because Ahmed, I am inclined to go with your gut here in terms of let's just do the lookup flow and not try to do any sort of SMS verification thing for now. I think whenever we have like question around this, we should focus on simplicity first, and only go to a more complex approach if we have a more complex. So I'd say let's try it with just this. You know, when you're thinking about this lookup flow, think about a guest lookup as well, and just make sure you're factoring that in.
Yeah.
And for now, let's try to do it in the simplest way possible.
Okay.
And maybe that actually is enough to get us away from having to do any kind of printed barcode for now too, right? Like if somebody has an ID and they're registered, like, do we even need to print anything out? What's your thinking on that?
We don't.
Jay or Mark, do you see any reason, at least for this sprint, not to just have this single unified lookup flow and skip the printing or scanning of barcodes for now? Or at least proposing that to Quiniso. Sorry, Mark, I didn't hear you. Can you say again?
Sorry, I think that's right. I think it'd be very easy to add later if it's not the case.
Okay.
Yeah, what I'm thinking for the where the barcode will be improving a little bit the experience is that, okay, now if you need to go, if you need to leave back and forth, it's just a little bit faster for the entirety of the operation. To imagine if you have a bunch of them, they're showing up, they just have a QR code, they can just scan it and just, get in. So it's a little bit more seamless. But for an MVP, for a minimal version, the guard looking them up, checking the ID and let them in it's totally doable and totally reasonable, actually.
Yeah, and to that point, it's not that we're going without a QR code, it's just that they need to download the app to do it, rather than printing it out, right?
Right.
So, so let's try that for now. Let's see how it goes. Because I just don't want to over-design. I don't want to over-design it for this first release.
Okay.
So did that resolve this question too, of a push link or a one-time password?
So.
Yeah, because we won't have that. We won't have the barcode either, right?
Mark, you said we can send SMS messages, right?
Yes.
So then I think when they say please, go on.
I was gonna say I haven't tested it in Zambia, but like the specs or the documentation says it works in Zambia just fine. So.
Yeah. So what do you think? Do you think we should or should not for this sprint try to do? So right now this was designed with the idea that the guard is going to say please download. But maybe on this first sign-in, right? As soon as we update the account, we trigger a text message that says, "Your account has been created. Here's a link to download."
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, let's do that. So that, and this would be the place to do it, right? Is right as soon as the account is created.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Okay. So I'll add that to the flow and then Ahmed give some thought to if that just brings them to the same first sign-in screen. It probably does, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think multiple entry flow is something we don't need to design for this sprint. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's next.
And I think we don't need this for now. This will just rely on the lookup. Rely on lookup.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. So I think we went through all those. Anything that we need to ask Oniso as of now? Like, is there anything that's blocking from the get-go?
Oh, I see.
No, not that I can think of. Do we have an order of priority for all the screens, or not specifically? I can just make a judgment call, I guess.
I haven't given that any thought. I'd say, Ahmed, after this call, maybe give it some thought. And if you think we need to prioritize, then we can sit down and do that. If you think that we can just tackle it all, then let's do it. But if not, I'm happy to think through that with you.
Okay, cool.
And then we did have a question about whether we needed to create a password for now. That was something that came up earlier. Ahmed, what's your? You were the one that brought it up of whether that's.
Yeah, the creation of the password, is it something that they just create their password, put their identification number in order for them to sign up? How does that mechanism happen? Do they get, because usually you get, maybe put your information, like I'm trying to think when I sign up for like my college account, I had an ID number. So I just put my ID number and I created my password and then just sign up based on that ID number that's in the database. I'm thinking maybe something like that.
Yeah.
But they would have to get something to start from, right?
Yeah.
I don't.
Mark, I wonder, would this be I think this might be something that's best left to you in terms of, whether that creates too much of a loophole not to have a password, or if we can know that the app is on their phone, it's on the phone number that's registered with the account.
I think we just do the sign in. We can keep the sign in going through SMS. There's no password. You get an SMS number, you type in the code, and you're signed in.
Okay.
Because I think the danger, I don't know, it's just, there'll be more complexity about forgotten passwords and resetting people and blocking accounts.
Yeah.
So then we're saying here on the first sign in, it is SMS. It is. So step me through the logic then of sort of how that.
Well, sorry. So, but this is. You're moving off of the. So you have found they update. This is the guard is updating the account, and then there's the please download, and then so there'd be a link, I guess, at that point to signing in for the first time, sent to their phone. And then they would be signed in, and then in the future they would just go and do that same flow of like sign in with your phone number.
And you could ensure that they don't forward that to a different phone.
Well, no. But for the first one, it wouldn't matter. Well, the first, even if you're right, they could possibly forward it to another phone, but I'm just trying to think they could also forward the number to another phone. Like they could give their password to someone else. I don't think it'd be unlikely that they would forward it.
Okay.
Well, I'm thinking like if let's say this is all being kicked off by the security guard, right? So the security guard puts in their information, their phone number, they get an SMS saying like, "Hey, you're signed in," or here's you go to this login to sign in, and then that will be a one-time link. It would only work once. And then the next time they go in, it would basically say, "Yeah, sign in with your phone number."
So Mark, I don't know if you can really see, but is it something similar to this where it's saying basically enter the phone number registered with your account?
Yeah.
Through a text with the verification code.
Yeah.
Right.
And then once you get to enter the number, it just texts you a verification code and you're done. You type in the verification code on the next screen. It works really well on iOS. I don't know how it works on Android, but on iOS, they even extract it from the iMessage.
Yeah.
app. So it actually ends up being faster, I think, than passwords in most cases. Like it's just remarkably fast. The downside is there's a little bit of a security flaw in that you can sometimes steal someone's phone or take their phone number by calling the carrier, but like I don't know that that's on the list of threats for Mkwashi contractors.
I think let's assume for this sprint it's not. For the
we can solve that later.
For the first 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're saying we don't need a password for now, and we don't need an SMS. Well, the SMS flow is essentially the one-time registration link.
Yeah, I can do that.
So consider the queuing logic for the update flow. We don't. This one will be Mark. So Mark, actually Ahmed, you'll need to think through that as well too, right? We talked about queuing logic, and that would be, that's here if Ponisa needs to review multiple.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was another place too. Ahmed, where in the flow were you saying the security guard might have to have multiple people that they're looking up? Would that be?
Wait, you said the security guard looking up multiple people?
You had talked about queuing, right?
Yeah, this one.
So this here we definitely need a queuing thing here, right?
Yeah, exactly. This is what we were talking about when it comes to like calling Paniso. Like once somebody is the access is requested, so you're already in the database as a user, and we're just categorizing on users, pending users, users with granted access, denied. Yes.
Okay, so if there's another queuing place on it, just let us know on that, because I think right now this is the only place that we have queuing logic.
Yeah.
Mark, maybe you give that some thought too.
Yeah.
And a pending. So then we have add a pending state for user access. That would be here, right? The wait. Is that right?
Is pending at that level, or is pending before it gets to review? Anyone who is going to review is basically pending until Paniso makes the decision and say, okay, that person is granted access, that person is denied.
Yeah.
Other than that,
everyone,
right. Yeah. So I'm thinking.
Yeah, you're right. Though this would be a place where the pending state would actually be communicated to a user. Yeah. Right, or communicated to the guard.
I'm thinking this is a different pending state. Why would there be a wait time there?
No, you're right, because this would be only a wait for Ponisa to come to the gate to escort them.
Yeah.
Right, so they may need to wait like 10 minutes for him to come to that part of part of the site.
Okay. So yeah, I'm talking about more like pending status of the user.
Yeah.
Before they're either valid or granted or denied or any of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. So we don't have the first time sign-in screen anymore if we have if we use the SMS login, right?
Does the SMS pull up straight to the screen? Let's see. Does it pull up straight to this screen? This would be a little different, right?
It'd be slightly different. It'd just be sign in with your phone number. Or sign in with Google. That's what we have right now. Sign in with your phone number or sign in with Google. I just need to spruce up the view.
Yep.
Yeah, I can update that. So
Yeah, great. Yeah, and then last question I had was that we had captured from the call, the flow for a guest or a one-time password, and I think we've solved this with the lookup screen and the push send.
and also if we say please download, we send them the link. It's just gonna download the app. When they download the app, they're gonna have to get on that first screen. Nolan, do you mind going back to the mock?
Yeah.
So like that first one, that onboarding screen, right? Like they would naturally always land there. They hit get started, and then that's where they get the sign in. And we wouldn't just start with the sign in screen, right?
Oh, you'd land them here?
Yeah, so they would land here, hit the get started, and then get here.
Okay. And Mark, you'd be able to carry through the phone number that that link, so that even if they land here, when they finally do get to the sign-in screen, they would still have that context.
Yeah, it's doable. Yeah.
Would we be able to autofill with their number?
Definitely autofill.
Okay.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we've gone through everything. I think we resolved all the questions that we brought up today.
Yeah.
Anything else that we need to go through? I think Mark and Ahmed, you're the two that we most want to get unblocked here, and that you feel like you have a good game plan going into the sprint.
Okay. Very helpful.
Nolan, quick question. We talked about the platform the other day. Or sorry, the name for the site. Would this be the time that we want to actually just think about doing like nkwashi.doublegdp.com and have that be the community?
Yeah, I think that's probably the right thing. Yeah, I was thinking app.doublegdp.com, but it probably makes more sense to do nkwashi.doublegdp.com.
And everybody gets like a subdomain at doublegdp, at least initially.
Yeah.
So.
Do we wanna consider a shorter version?
Oh.
DGD.
Yeah, I don't know. Nolan, do you have like?
You mean a different top level domain?
Yeah, instead of having to spell out the whole thing, like nkwashi.doublegdp.com.
I think that's a great suggestion. I think that means just buying another domain name, right?
I'm not sure, Mark.
Yeah. I mean, that's no skin off my back. I can make the render on whatever site you want to put it on in both.
Yeah. I think, Ahmed, let's come back to that question, because I think it just means that we need to buy another domain name, and we just need to I think it's easy to do. We just need to figure out what name we want and find one that's available.
What about the tiny link things? How does the tiny or smart links work? They like a shorter version of the longer link. You know what I'm talking about? The tiny URLs.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it just redirects to whatever it's in the database.
Ahmed, I think this is actually a really good point. But I'm gonna suggest that we not tackle it right now, just because I think this will get us going for this first sprint. And I need to leave. I need to end this call a little bit early. So let's leave it unresolved for now, even though I think it's a really good point.
Sounds good, guys.
Okay.
Yeah, all good for me. I have plenty of items to work on, so I'm gonna start.
I got a bunch.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Great, and we'll still be in touch during the course of the sprint. I just wanted to make sure that we had a good starting place.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate your time this morning. Have a great week, and I'll talk with you guys on Slack.
All right.
All right. Sounds good. See you guys.
Right.
Bye.